one of the early trailers, you had shown these red parkas. Did you anticipate that fans would go into a craze about these dreamy red parkas as much as they did? What's going on, everybody? It's a very special edition of the Ghost Heads radio show. Once again, I am Ted, aka Steady, and my next guest has worked on movies like The Greatest Showman and The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Her most recent project was all about keeping the Ghostbusters dressing warm in the face of a new ice age. Please welcome to the show costume designer for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, Alexis Forte. How are you today?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you so much.
Congrats on the release of Frozen Empire. You must be ecstatic. I mean, how are you feeling now that it's out? Now that the world has watched it, the fans have all been rejoicing and praising it. What are you going through right now?
I'm so excited. This is a total dream. Um, I was the assistant costume designer on Ghostbusters Afterlife. So it was very exciting to come back in this capacity as the designer of the next Ghostbusters. And I love the franchise so much and the Reitmans. So it was um, I just love being part of it, and I'm so happy that the world is liking what we created.
They're not only liking what you created, but they've been in a frenzy with some of the outfits and the ensemble choices. So you've caused a lot of waves in the Ghostbuster fan community, and I know you've seen a lot of that. So I'll be sure and bring some of those things up. But talk to us about maybe the difference between Afterlife and Frozen Empire. You are taking more of a lead role in the costume department, but getting into Afterlife, was it maybe a big transition from anything else you've done? Like, what are some of the intricacies of working on a Ghostbusters project as opposed to some of the other things you've worked on?
I feel like there's such like a world that was already created in the 80s that we wanted to stay true to. And Danny Glicker, who designed Ghostbusters Afterlife, is so great at that. And I've assisted him on like 7 or 8 movies. And he's so great. If Another movie we worked on was called The Front Runner that Jason Reitman directed, and that was about Gary Hart, who was running for president in '88. And something that Danny did in that is like, look at the source material, look at the actual people and people actually wore. And so he incorporated a little bit of that when we did Afterlife as well, to like take these characters as real human beings, which they are in our universe, and so draw inspiration from what people had on in the original movies to like how that would translate into our new characters. And so I wanted to build upon that when we did Frozen Empire. And even like Dan Aykroyd, I put him in this jean jacket with like a corduroy collar, which is something that you see him in the 80s movies. And so we recreated it and had it like very worn in, like it's been like sitting in his closet for all these years. And so that was definitely, something based on like the world that Danny created in Afterlife that I just wanted to build upon. And we wanted it to feel very different than Afterlife. Like Afterlife has um a very muddy, rusty, subdued color palette, and we wanted to just heighten everything up in this like hot, sweaty summer in New York. And so we totally changed the color palette, and wanted everything to feel a little bit different than the previous movie, just to bring it into this new New York City atmosphere of them being back
Yeah,
home.
definitely, and that is probably a great reference to being in Oklahoma,
Mhm.
outside of where we are familiar with, outside of this busy New York. the environment, the state of the Ghostbusters in Oklahoma. We're not familiar with anything, so that's probably another reason why there's such like you mentioned, a muddy color palette.
Yeah, like our code name for that one was called Russ City, and so like a lot of it is based on on that like over um like that arc of color that was used in that movie, which worked so well for the Oklahoma, for the Oklahoma and the dirt farmer and all that.
So, Frozen Empire, tell us about maybe where do you start with? Obviously, there's like a script, there's a story for the costume department, for the wardrobe. Are you meeting with Gil on everything in advance before production starts, and you're
Yeah.
discussing like every outfit? Are you drawing everything? Do you have somebody that does that for you?
Um, on Ghostbusters, I didn't use an illustrator, so I did
Wow.
the illustrations, but I do use an illustrator sometimes. Yeah, I met with Gil on everything. So we first meet, we discuss the script, all the characters. I met him here in New York when they were coming to look at some locations and research, and then I start building mood boards based on our first discussion. So then it'll be like boards and boards of Phoebe and Trevor and Callie, and sort of build upon there, and then also drawing out what we think, the black Ghostbuster suits will look like, and it being important for those to feel very much in the same world. We didn't want it to feel like sleek or futuristic you know, um, or just be a black version of them. So just like having slight little details that we change to make it seem like um, its own little world there at the lab.
Which is fantastic because a great sequel, in my opinion, does these things to expand on the lore, to expand on what fans are familiar with. And so these are what you're talking about. You shared these recently on
Mhm.
your Instagram page, and they're fantastic. It's great.
Oh,
I
thanks.
actually know a group in the US that all they wear is black flight suits. So they were
Mhm.
mostly happy when they saw these suits come out. They're already ahead of the game, but, no, I love these. So this is for um, the new
Oh,
engineer
yeah,
core of the Ghostbusters group. All the researchers wore this. This is Lucky's, I think we're looking at, or
yeah.
is this okay? This is Lucky's that we're looking at, and so I know you mentioned something about, we took away the elbow pads, unnecessary. Um, what who or what decided we're gonna go with black, and maybe what were the conversations that sort of went into changing the color and coming up with this new division of Ghostbusters?
It was scripted as black, so it was a
Ah,
decision, that Jason and Gil made, and but I think it was open to other options, if black ended up looking a little too sleek, but I feel like something that we do with the original Ghostbuster suits is that we have the fabric, we make the Ghostbuster suits, and then we wash them so that all the seaming puckers up, um, and looks aged, where if you pre-wash the cotton, it'll already be pre-shrunk, but we like to shrink it after we make the suits so that so it doesn't look perfect. And so
it's a
we
great
did the
tip.
same with so it has like it already does a lot of the pre-aging for us that way. And so we played around with the black as well, where um I got the tan cotton ripstop and dyed it black. We got a black cotton ripstop, and then we did a white and dyed it different colors of black, sort of to play around with the shades. And it turned out that the best option was just a black cotton ripstop that we make the suits out of, and then begin to wash it, and and create the puckering and the seaming there at the seams, and wash it with enzymes to pull out the color.
Wow.
Um, and so that's sort of how we decided on the black, that it was, in the script, but then also, like, just playing around with the options,
Sure.
and, um, and then sort of changing some of the seaming at the elbow pads, because we didn't want to use the elbow pads, but also like how can I like sort of nod to them needing to be there without using them, and then adding some extra little pockets that a scientist could keep, little tools and pencils
Great details.
and whatnot. And then I also, from working so much with the suits now, I do have to say, like, the Velcro at the waistband becomes problematic sometimes as you wash them and stuff. So I was like, "Oh, this is a great opportunity to change that," and sort of go with the brass snaps that we have at the brass zippers, um, and change it, at the cuffs too, to sort of, have these details that are a little, cleaner so that things wouldn't get attached to the suit in the lab.
Yeah. So these sort of methods that you kind of come up with when putting these suits together, is this all stuff that you've learned over your career, or is this just like trial and error kind of when you're working?
A lot of what we do is trial and error, and that's, like, why the
Wow.
prep, is so important, because there's a lot that you come in with, to each movie because you've already learned something from the last movie that you did, but every story is different, and every fabric and every element that you're using is different, and like creating the ice was a lot of trial and error on this movie as well, to create a practical look for the ice. And starting, like, we thought that maybe the answer would be, to do like a shellac or a resin. um then we played around with, like, glitter, and layering that in with sand, um, but then, like, what can we use if the suits don't smell toxic, so we're not poisoning our actors? Um, and
Wow.
so it was just trial and error with what we landed on, which was, uh, an acrylic matte medium with white sand that
Wow.
we paint on, and then they take a heat gun, and make it bubble up, um, in certain areas, and that's what creates the ice look. And our
So cool.
amazing Ager Dyer also created these, like, little, silicone icicles that, like, hang out from, like, little zipper pulls, and, it was just a very talented team.
Yes, no, clearly. Were you this is totally not off subject, but getting off the movie a little bit. Growing up as a kid, were you very crafty? Were you sort of working with papers and paper mache or painting a lot? Like, did you notice all these things when you were growing up?
Yeah, I was always very into art, and I went to an art magnet school for high school, in Miami. So I grew up in Portugal, and I moved to Miami when I was 10. And at the elementary school there, the art teacher took an interest in me, and then she recommended me to the higher art class at the middle school, and then from there, the middle school teacher suggested applying to the arts high school, which was so helpful because, like, as a kid moving to the States, my mom's American, so I always spoke English with an American accent, but learning how to read and write in 5th grade was very hard. And so it was great to be in a class where you felt like you were thriving and where the teacher showed an interest, where, being in my other classes where I'm just trying to make friends and trying to learn how to read and write in English was just a little demoralizing. It all worked out and it was fine now. But but it's hard when you just want to make friends and
I get it. Yeah.
and you're also trying to catch up as, an immigrant kid.
Yeah. No, definitely. And but that's a great story. So to all you teachers watching out there, support the kids when you can because sometimes they're going to do fantastic things.
Yeah.
later on in life. So
It
yeah,
was
that's
Miss Pliskin. I
fantastic.
still remember her name, my art teacher in 5th grade who took an interest and put me into the higher art class in middle school. Miss Pliskin. I really appreciate her.
There you go. Next, she needs a red carpet ticket, or she needs a
She
premiere ticket
should.
to your next film, just so we can thank her properly. Okay, so I had one big question. Everybody in this movie, who most of them who wore a flight suit in Afterlife, had wore them again, so that wasn't maybe too big of a deal. However, you were able to put a flight suit on Janine Melnitz. Please tell us about her reaction trying on a flight suit for the first time.
It was
The
great. It
great
was
Betty
so
Potts.
yes. It was great. It was, we so I create these boards for each scene of what everyone's wearing, and at first we didn't think that Janine would be in a flight suit, and we board it all up, and I'm talking to Gil, and I'm like, "What does she wear? Does she just keep the same thing on when our guys all suit up?" And then we kinda look at each other both, and we're like, "I think she's gonna need a flight suit."
I love it.
And it was exciting, so we had already had our first fitting with her, and then I walk into her trailer, and I'm like, "I have some exciting news. I think you're gonna get a flight suit." Um, and it was really fun. It was a really fun fitting and creating hers, and we did, slim out the legs on hers a little bit, and she is very petite, so we were like, you don't need to use the elbow pads because all of those things kind of, you know, become a little bulky. And we found a great fit, and she gets to keep her Janine glasses on, um,
Yes,
which are very important. Um,
absolutely.
so it was really fun, and I, of course, felt very honored and excited to be giving her her first flight suit after all these years.
What was her, like, her first reaction, like, wearing it? Like, did she just get all overwhelmed and stuff, or, like, how what was that like?
Um, she's such a pro, but like she was excited, like because she's an original Ghostbuster, so I feel like it felt natural. Like she was like it felt like this was the right time for her to have a flight suit.
Did she say the line, "I was born to wear this stuff," which was a Louis Tully line in Ghostbusters 2? That would've been perfect if she would've said that,
That
so
would have been perfect.
that would've been perfect. So I did notice, another, character, Podcast played by
Mhm.
Logan Kim was a kind of a big change. This was something that I grew up with in the '90s, wearing collared multicolored
Yeah.
button-up shirts like this. What was the thought process behind, Logan Kim getting sort of '90s, summery vibe?
It was sort of an evolution of his '80s style in Afterlife, and we sort of wanted to build on it, that he's still very into retro, but we wanted to come out of the '80s a little, and so then I started, looking, we had some '70s options and some '90s options, and there was these color blocking shirts that we really liked, and so we made this one for him, but based on color blocking shirts that we really liked that I had found out in the world. But just to keep him in the retro feel, but have you know it stepping out of the '80s, so it's not grounded just in that world.
What were some of the challenges that you faced? I know you've talked about the weathering of the suits, creating the ice on the flight suits, but like what was maybe the biggest challenge that you had to overcome, or something that took longer to figure out than you really wanted it to?
That is a good question. Um, I think it's just everything, just is very time consuming. And when you're making a movie like Ghostbusters, it's there's so many multiples that you're dealing with of the costume. So, like, even someone like Podcast, we had like scarves and gloves and this like cute hat with like little flaps on the side that we had made for him.
Perfect,
And
by the way,
we
perfect.
but and then some of that stuff gets cut. Like you never even end up seeing the hat because like on the day we decided like it's too much and he's too bundled up compared to everybody else. But to get there, we have to have everything ready for day one. So especially with Logan, who's a minor, he will always have also a photo double when he's on set so that when he goes to school and we turn the camera around, I hope I'm not ruining any of the magic for anybody, but,
No,
like,
no.
if you're just looking at his back or something, it means that Logan had to go to school, you know, because he's a kid.
Yeah. That's
And,
sometimes what they have to do, yeah.
yeah, so you have to have everything ready for the stunt double, the hero, which is what we call what's on the main actor. The hero
Ah,
needs 2 of everything just in case something happens. In
smart,
Logan's
yeah.
case, he always has a photo double, and then there's, the aging as it goes along, so it's like the iced version, the non-iced version, the wet version, so it's like it all just takes time. So it's like having like the scarf that podcast wears is this great vintage Liz Claiborne scarf that I found at a thrift store that I loved, and I love the pattern and I love the design. So we had it on the fitting and we decided let's recreate this. So then it's like finding all the yarns that could match. Maybe like we changed a little bit of the design to fit more with what I wanted, and then finding a knitter who has a machine knit who can create a similar knit to the original scarf and recreating that. And then same with the mitten gloves that he wears. There was a knitter who created all of those and is picking all of that. But it's making sure that we can create enough for that first day that I know that when we need to make more, we can. So it's just the time that it takes. And then there's also, maybe I'll post it on Instagram, but like this whole like assembly line of like these furry hats that I made, and there's like 10 being made, and then like we don't use any of them. But so
Better to
just
have
all
more
of
than
that.
less.
Just the making sure that we can, deliver by the shooting date
Sure.
is is the time consuming part because there's, the like you look at a scarf and you're like, they just bought 6 of that scarf. And it's like, well, no, like we had to make all of them, and like little things. Phoebe has this red shirt that she wears, this like red camp shirt, these little circles on it. And we made that fabric because Danny Glicker in Afterlife had this little purple t-shirt on her that had the little symbols of the cards that Bankman holds up in 84. And it was like such a little
Yeah.
detail that like probably no one even noticed, but it's like the circle, the square, the X. And so I wanted to do another little nod to her wearing something else that's like a little symbol. So the little circle pattern that she has are the circles on the side of the proton pack, where it's
Oh, that's
like the
great.
circle and the half circle and the semicircle.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so I work with the graphic designers. We we put those circles in a little line and then created a pattern that was mixed matched, and then getting options of it silk screened onto linens and printed onto cottons. And so all that is so time consuming just for like a little Easter egg that like someone may or may not notice.
It's all appreciated. We all appreciate it so much. So you've done fantastic work and you put so much time into it. Fans appreciate those little things so much. I noticed in like the initial trailers, they spent a lot of time on the beach in New Jersey.
Mhm.
And there were some things that kind of were reminiscent of, like, the beach. Few characters from the movie Jaws look like
Mhm.
they were in the same pose, like, the same frame, very similar outfits on or bathing suits. That's all intentional? Is that what you were trying to go for? You reference, like, old movies like that?
We do reference old movies like that, and we, like and we do want it to have, like, a retro-y feel at times, so, it's like dressing Coney Island in a way that feels, fun and summery, but also, like, a little trashy in a good way, and just, like, a mix of, um, different people and just for it to feel, grounded in this New York world. Um, and that was definitely a fun scene to shoot. It was in the summer when the skies were turning red in New York. I don't know if you remember that from last
Oh my
summer.
god, yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those days. And we had to,
That
like,
must've been
shut down
difficult.
shooting.
Yeah.
Um, it was a little disappointing because they were like, "This is so cool, I wish we could use it." But for this scene, we don't really need the sky turning red.
No, had only we changed the story and the skies
Yeah,
are red instead of icy cold and blue, yeah. No, that would've been
exactly.
fantastic. The opening scene in the movie takes us into the past where the firehouse is occupied by this, old firefighter group, and so did you, like, had to do research and reference of the time, like, what firefighters would wear and, like, all that leather and everything else they were wearing at the time?
So for that scene, we have another costume designer, Ruth Myers, who's amazing and genius, and she's worked with Gil before. She's such an icon, and so she designed that opening scene, um, and she designed Melody, the ghost, and the armor that Kumal wears. Um, which I know, I wish I could tell you more about it, but that was all Ruth, and it was so beautiful, so detailed.
Yes.
It was gorgeous. She did such an amazing job, and it was so nice to collaborate with her, and, and she's Gil's collaborator, so it was really nice to have, like, I'd worked with Jason before, and she worked with Gil before, so it was great to have the 2 of us there, and it felt like the Ghostbusters spirit of this, like, family, this family coming together
Sure.
that,
Yeah.
so I wish I could tell you more, but I don't wanna speak for Ruth, but I think that she created such a lovely world, and I know that, the again, this is just, like, a little detail, but the yellow that she uses on the eights for her firefighter hats, I then replicated the same one for the firefighters at the very end of the movie, who come to the firehouse, and so we have ladder, 7 come at the end because 'cause they're at ladder 8, but I made sure to have the same yellow that matched, and we had our Ager dyers, like, painted in the same style, so it mirrors the opening and it sort of bookends the firefighters. Um, and but I can't really speak to anything else that she created, but I just think it looked so beautiful, and she did such a great job.
Yeah, it's great. I can't imagine if how challenging or maybe how fun it is to try and work with materials that aren't as flexible or maybe it's fun for costume designers, but I would feel overwhelmed trying to create armor when all I've worked with is fabrics before. So
Right.
yeah, that's got to
There was
be
these Yeah.
challenging.
There's these amazing armorers there. There's so many, like, great costume resources and makers that, it was I agree with you, it was very interesting to see her create something so unique.
Okay, so now we're gonna get to the big thing that like set the internet ablaze. In the one of the early trailers, you had shown these red parkas. Did you anticipate that fans would go into a craze about these dreamy red parkas as much as they did?
I did not.
They're fantastic. They're so cool, and the fans just ran with them. I mean, I am one as well, but I'm also in Texas, so I don't have a use
Mhm.
for a 15-pound red parka. But tell us about some of the details that went into this, especially that LED light, which I was wondering if it did anything specifically, or is it just sort of like a reference point for the cast members?
It's just sort of a reference point, and we wanted it to, like, light the way sort of without it being, too intrusive or too bright, and have something with the wires wrapping around that felt, reminiscent of the other tools that the Ghostbusters use. Um, I did not foresee this being such a huge hit with the fans, but our resident Ghostbuster, who has been a Ghostbuster since he was a child, knew. Jason Reitman knew. He just knew. And as we were developing these parkas, he was like, "We've really got to sit down with these parkas. What are you thinking?" So I walked him through some ideas. Him and Gil came to my office. We had all these elements that we were playing with, and I'd never had this kind of process before, where these, like a producer and director come in and like we sort of play together, and so I walked them through some options of we wanted, and Jason's big note was the shoulders. He was like, "I feel like the shoulders have to mirror our suits." And I was like,
Ah,
"100%, yes."
yeah.
The moment he said that, I was like, "Of course." And that's sort of like I just yes and onto that note. And I so appreciate the thought and consideration that he was offering. And so I got some of the white cotton ripstop that we use. We color matched it to the coats. Again, just like huge appreciation for my aging dyeing team who just matched that red exactly. Um, and then I sort of started building onto it. Waxley, who's the brand who makes this coat, makes top of the line, eco, vegan. They're also Canadian, which is big because our Ghostbusters are originally Canadian.
They are. Let's call it what it is. They
So
are, yeah.
so I love that little detail too, and so did Waxley. They were like, and I was like, "Oh, I know." um, but they're such high quality, and there are so many tech elements to this coat and reflective qualities, and really like sturdy zippers that we just wanted to rip all of that away from. So anything that was reflective, I substituted with cotton. We pulled out all the zippers and changed all of those. There's zippers at the back too. Everything is changed. Um, we use that same cotton ripstop to add the belt loops.
Mm.
The pull at the waist we changed into cotton pulls, and we just sort of like restructure the whole coat. And I also changed one of the sleeves so that the sleeve mirrors the elbow patch
On the
on the
engineered
black.
suits?
Yeah. And then scaling up our no ghost patch as
Yeah,
well. And
making it black.
reversing the colors, because like holding up a no ghost patch, I was like, this is so small for this coat, and the red on red is going to look insane.
So did
So
you come up with the black color change, or was that something in the
yeah,
script?
no, that was me when we were playing around with ideas, and I got it embroidered in various stages. We embroider it still on the same fabric that we use for the Ghostbuster suits. Um, and I feel like these patches, um, which makes them special is that they're all embroidered on fabric and then hand cut out, so they don't have like the clean edge of a patch.
Mm.
Um, but and so we use that same technique on this, and and then scaled it up. And there was this size that was so large that I was like, I think this is going to be too big, but let's make this really big size. And that's the size that we ended up going with. That once I put it on the coat, I was like, no, I think this is it. I don't think it's too big now that I see it in person.
That is awesome. They are fantastic. Who from the cast was, like, most excited when they saw it and they understood the gravity of, like, what I'm about to put on and how it's gonna change, sort of the fandom? Anybody? Probably Phoebe? Sorry, McKenna Grace?
Yeah, McKenna loved it. I mean, I have to say, they were all really excited about it. I think they also like they had all worn the Ghostbuster suits before. They already had, the packs on them and the guns. So they were all really excited about anything new. Um, because we're all like kids in a
They're
toy
all fans.
store
Yep.
on that set. Like everyone, no one is blasé. Everyone's like, "Look at this cool new thing. Look at this. Look at." We're all just as excited to be there.
That's amazing. I love hearing that. These are fantastic. And yes, um, I was even shocked at just how much fans would not stop talking about this. It was like weeks and weeks of like people like messaging each other and collaborating and searching for something similar online and sharing techniques on, how you can do this. And then I feel like within a few days I saw somebody rebuilding your LED square.
I
Um
am so impressed. The fans
yeah,
are I mean, even from the trailer, within hours, people were like, "It's this Waxley coat that's, like, been, reconstructed." And I remember sending it to Eric over at Ghost Corp and me being like, "I swear to God I didn't tell them. I don't know how they know."
it wasn't me, Eric. It wasn't me.
I was, like, panicking. I was like, "Oh my god, it was not me. I did not say anything."
Wow.
And Eric was like, "No, no, I know. This is like the fans are amazing." And I was like, "They are so amazing."
Yeah, that's awesome. This one little pin on the left, is that it looks like a clover? Is that what that is?
Yes, so that one's only on Lucky's, and it's because she had a very similar clover, but smaller as a necklace, in Afterlife. So we wanted to do a little nod towards that on her coat.
I love
So I
it.
put
I love it.
a little good luck charm on hers.
I love it. Were there any other sort of similar, like, features on anyone else or like something specific for them in the movie?
Um, no. There was no one else who had added little elements to them. Like, everyone's code is just slightly different, like, whether we,
Ah,
like, change the snaps down at the bottom or, like, give them a different hook at the top. I feel like in classic Ghostbusters fashion, we don't want it to look, like,
exactly the same.
too uniform, too like, everyone wears it just a little bit differently. Um and that's something that I love about the Ghostbusters universe, that it's like everyone can take the same suit, but, like, outfit it to what's right for them, which is why anyone can be a Ghostbuster.
You are 100% because some people know exactly which proton pack they're looking at. Like, oh no, that was Egon's from '84. Oh no, no, that was
Mhm.
Ray's from '84. So there's little details here and there, down to like the scratches in certain parts, and it's just like wild that
So
fans know
impressive.
things like that. So you talked about like Easter eggs or like details that are maybe so quick that fans might miss it. What are like one or two things that you had put into the movie that were like really hard to see or just too quick to notice? Maybe something that might have been edited out that you weren't sure that was going to be in the movie. So something else like an Easter egg or a reference that you want to share with the fans.
Um, Callie's necklace, she has this, like, little necklace that has these 3 little stars on it that she wore in Afterlife, and on this one, I added, a little star to it, so it had 4. So from the very beginning, her, like, little necklace had 4 stars on it to add 1 for Gruberson. And
Aw,
again, that's, like, something that, like, you gotta take it to a jeweler, and he has to, like we had to recreate all of them so that they all look the same because 'cause they're all a little slightly different than the original one. So that was just, like, a little thing that I added that no one will ever notice except Danny Glicker, who I spoke to after he watched it this weekend. He was like, "Was Callie in the same necklace with an extra little star?" And I was like, "She sure was."
wow.
Um,
Eagle eyes that guy. Holy cow.
and, I had Trevor there's a lot of people in I'm a New Yorker, and, there's a lot of people around New York who walk around in T-shirts with, a black lab on it, which is from this tavern restaurant in Martha's Vineyard, and it's sort of like a symbol of I go to Martha's Vineyard. And that's where the very first Ghostbusters was written. Um, Dan wrote it out at Martha's Vineyard, and so we thought it would be great if Trevor had that black lab on a T-shirt, and so we recreated it with permission from the black lab people over at Martha's Vineyard, and we
Fantastic.
and that pink T-shirt that he's wearing with it is a little nod to it, and we like aged it down so that it would feel like an old T-shirt that he found. But he wears all these great graphic tees of cars in Afterlife. But now that he's a little bit older, we were like, oh, I feel like he would just get cool graphic tees at thrift stores. And so that's where that one came from, where it was a black lab, but it's a little nod to where the very first Ghostbusters was written at Martha's Vineyard.
I love that. That's fantastic. That's a great little detail. Great little Easter egg reference that fans definitely would not have picked up on.
Celeste only wears two different T-shirts because she just ends up in the same costume throughout that whole sequence at the end. But both of the graphics that she wears are by Black artists, which I thought was important and something that Lucky, I think, would want to support. And so there's like little things like that where everyone's elements are just very, we're thinking about it all. No one's just in a T-shirt.
No one's just in a t-shirt except Kumail. Was he maybe the easiest to dress up because his character is sort of aloof, somewhat irresponsible, a child at heart, and so he's always wearing either baggy clothes or like sneakers, basketball shorts.
Yeah.
Tell us about, was that what you and Gila had talked about?
Yeah, so he has two different looks. We figure that it's really hot and in New York, and they keep talking about how hot it is. But we figure that because he's the fire master, he doesn't really feel the heat the same way other people do. So he wears these baggy hoodies,
Ah, okay.
and that's where that came from. And I had a whole variation of like since he sells sneakers, we wanted to have him in very cool sneakers as well. And so we try on these different, like all these different kinds, but we ended up on Nike Jordans, which of course are very cool. And if you're someone who's into sneakers, you would never brand clash. So if you have the Nikes on, I know it's a sneakerhead thing though. So you would
My
have
my
the
my teenage son tells me that all the time. He says, "Why are you wearing that with that?" I'm just like, "I don't know, because the colors match, but the
yeah.
brands are wrong." So I get it all the
Exactly.
time.
You and I wouldn't care about that, but if you're a sneakerhead, like you would wear the Nikes with the Nike socks and the Nike basketball shorts. You wouldn't, brand clash. So this look that we're looking at now, it's all Nike. The hoodie was from a thrift store. And I found that one. But the hoodie that he wears for the majority of the film, which says American Idol down the front, but idol spelled as like an idol person. Um,
Gotcha. That's
not like he's
great.
an idol.
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah, that's fantastic.
and that was a joke that was scripted. And as we were trying to figure out like where to put the graphic, and I had like everyone like boarded out, I was like, just so that we all realize like he wears this for the whole movie. And they were like, oh, so you have to like stare at like American Idol just like across his chest the whole movie. I was like, I mean, I think it's a funny joke. We should definitely keep it, but let me just like workshop some ideas of where we can silk screen it in different patterns so it's not so in your face. And so that's when I created the pattern where, like it goes top to bottom and has the splatter across it too. So um, it's not so in your face. So, something to think about too, that like when something is written and scripted, sometimes it's hard to foresee like how it's going to look for the duration. And when you break it down, you're like, they wear this from the moment we meet them until the very end. People are like, that's a long time to be staring at something. I'm like, it sure is. So let's love it.
Was it a smooth production for you specifically, or were there any, like, emergency moments where something had gotten damaged or you had to repair something, like, kind of on the fly? Anything that kind of happened on like that on the set?
um, I mean, for me, so ugh, I'm, like, so hesitant about it, even sharing it, but, like, but this is, like, part of movie making. All the Ghostbusters suits, since there has to be so many made, so for Ghostbusters Afterlife, we made 78 suits in all, and for this one, we made 98 suits. And so that means, I know, it's a lot, and it goes back to
Wow.
what I was saying before of, like, there's the hero, and there's the backups, and there's the aged one, and then all of the molds for the stunt doubles. So it all adds up. And so a lot of them are made in-house, and a lot of them we shop out to different makers where we would give them the pattern, and we have makers only make Callie suits or only make Phoebe suits, or and Callie suit came back where I don't want them just to start making it. I want them to make one based on the pattern that we send, it comes back for approval. And the shop that was doing Callie's, like, finally sent the Callie suit back for approval, and they had started cutting more of hers, but
Oh,
without me
no.
approving the yeah. And it came back, and it was just like, it was just not right. Like, they hadn't put the pockets in the place, the seaming at the arms I wasn't in the right like, it just, like, it wasn't the quality that I needed it to be. And she's our she's our number one. She's our, uh, you know, uh, and I just
You
and
panicked?
I just panicked, and we were starting with the suits. Like, for Afterlife, we had, like, s we got to, like, shoot
Yeah.
a lot of the movie before we even see them in the suits. This one, we started our shoot with all of them in the car, and that's what we shot for a week, them chasing the sewer dragon. And so I started, and we had our camera test in, like, a week and a half, and I just remember, like, holding it and being like, "Okay, okay, well, we're gonna" and the head tailor could see me getting, like, emotional about it, and then I just, like, started to cry. Just, like,
Oh,
silently
no.
cry as you're, like, holding it.
How
And I was
terrible.
like, "I'm just" and I was like, "How many have they cut already?" Because it's
Oh my
also, like,
gosh.
once you buy the fabric, like, I made sure to get 600 meters that were the same dye lot, because they dye them in 300 meters at a time, and but once and then anything else that's different, we would have to then dye to match our original color. And so once you start cutting into the fabric
Oh,
that we
man.
can't use, you've, like, cut into the correct dye lot. So it's all these, like, trickle on effects of just being like, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god."
Oh,
Uh,
no.
but then it all worked. I was like, we sent someone there the next morning, and I was just like, "Pull everything from them. I don't want them to make anything else. Just pull it, and, like, we'll just owe them whatever money we owe them, but just take everything away from them." And we brought to another place, and we started making 2 of hers in-house. So it all worked out, but it's just, like, one of those things where you're, like,
I can't
spiraling.
imagine. That's gotta be so stressful. Oh my god.
It's so stressful, and then people, of course, want second chances too. You're like, "Oh, no, no, like, we'll make it better," but, like, there's you know,
There's no time.
there's no time. Exactly. So it's just like, you're like, "I'm so sorry, there's no time."
Yeah.
So
We get it, but we're
I'm gonna
gonna
take
just
everything from you. And it's just like, it's unfortunate with those big orders, but it's just like, it might not be your top priority, and that's why it came back in this quality, but this is my top priority.
absolutely. No, absolutely. So, the movie's out. You talked about, how you're feeling now and everything. What was your first reaction after watching it? I mean, you're a part of this group, you're a part of this team, and you've worked on both these movies now, Afterlife and Frozen Empire, but, like, what is it like watching it for the first time, knowing how much work, how much time and effort you put into it, how much stress you went through? What is it like watching it for the first time, seeing everything and how glorious it is?
I just felt so much pride. I just felt so like, I felt so I think as an adult, it's hard to feel, proud of yourself, as crazy as that is. I feel like we teach kids, like, to feel proud of themselves, and it's hard to do that as an adult. And after watching it, I just felt very proud of myself, and it was nice to have that feeling that you don't often have as an adult, because 'cause we're all so hard on ourselves, you know?
Sure, sure.
Um and that sometimes we just need to, also parent ourselves in a way and be like, feel proud. And so it was so great in creating something with all your friends and what feels like your movie family, was just really exciting.
Well, it is so much fun. I was laughing like nonstop throughout.
Okay.
And you've done so much for the franchise and for the lore of Ghostbusters. We've not had, kind of a major shift in the costumes or the fashion in decades. So like this was a major like explosion for the fans out there of just new accessories, new outfits, just everything. So you've added to that, you've contributed, and it's
Oh,
gonna change the lore, and it's gonna make all the difference for the fans going forward forever. Like your legacy is going to live on for a long, long time, and so congratulations.
thank you.
It
Thank you
was
so much.
amazing, and you've done such a great work. You guys are a great team. I cannot wait to see more from not only the franchise but from you as well.
Thank you.
And Frozen Empire was just it was great seeing Afterlife. But as I told a theater full of people that we held our own screening down here in San Antonio, this was the movie that we were all waiting for. It was like back in New York, back in the firehouse. Like this is the one that we really were trying to get done since 1989 when Ghostbusters 2 came out. So it was fantastic. What a dream. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this, going
You.
through your outfits, going through your process. It's a lot of hard work, and it's great for fans to see exactly like what you go through, how much time and effort, how much planning goes into these movies. It's not easy. It's a ton of work, and so it's great for fans to understand sort of the inside and out of working on a movie, not just from like a writing or directing perspective or acting, but everybody behind the camera. And so this has been wonderful, and I'm so happy that I got this chance to talk to you. Thank you, Alexis, for doing this.
Thank you. I so appreciate it.